Okay, here with our buddy Dustin Williams with Habitat Works with one of the sweetest signs I've seen. So if you're watching on YouTube, you got to go check out that awesome Habitat Works sign. That's
Yeah,
cool,
I'll
man.
see if I can get a link to my guy's website. He's making them and selling them in anything metal actually. He's got a plasma cutter, he's a welder and a tattoo artist too. He does good ink work for sure. So,
It does a little bit of everything.
yep.
Nice. Well, like I said, Dustin Williams with Habitat Works is on our show. I'm excited about this one. How long have I been talking about doing this show with you?
Since the beginning,
Yeah, it's one
pretty
that
much.
I think you kind of brought it up, and then we talked about it one time while we were here. Just kind of, you know, invasive species and non-natives versus natives, and it was interesting to me because, well, you walked this property with me and Andy over where Andy lives, and it's in bad shape as far as stuff growing that shouldn't be growing, and things not getting to the first forest floor and things like that. So I don't know. It's just been interesting to me because a lot of my properties is what I would consider trashy, and I don't mean that like they're trashy, but it seems like the non-native or the invasive plants are more prevalent than the stuff that you want, and so
Oh
that's
yeah.
why it's been interesting to me. So that's the topic today. Um,
Yep.
so what's been going on, man? I know are you prepping for a auction today?
Well, the yes and no. I mean, I'm fielding calls about the auction. Seems to be what's going on. And
Yeah,
actually, just put another listing live. So
nice.
that's the other topic that we're not trying to integrate too heavily with, but things are rolling there. And just a short drop on that, I guess, is we put 5 new properties up on the market this week. Jason and I did everything from tillable to hunting. So we'll try to get a link probably to our agent pages, and you guys can come check those out.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but yeah,
Yeah, that's why we're doing it virtual. You had a auction or something going on this afternoon. You had to be up north, so I'm like,
yep,
dude, don't drive all the way down here. Let's just do this. And
yeah,
so shout out to your fiance. She was right. What makes
yeah.
the
She's
most
my
sense?
wife, but
Oh,
she
she's
she
your wife.
is she
Sorry,
is.
my bad.
Yeah, that's okay.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I'm not
It
offended.
makes
I
the most sense.
just have to make sure to correct that on the air because when she
So
listens,
she
she'll be
knows.
like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Hey, wait a minute. I'm your wife. Yeah, my fault. My fault.
who's your
Um,
fiance?"
well, it was you. So yeah, that's what we're doing today, and I think this show will kind of be pretty technical. Not, I don't mean technical, but educational. How about that? There's not
Yeah.
going to be a lot of BSing. We're going to talk about what it is that you have in your brain about these topics that can help the listeners, and can also see how honestly how what do you call it, effective somebody like you helping them out can be. um, I was just telling you, I was walking a property yesterday grabbing some cameras, the final set of cameras that I need to grab, and there's all this crap I'm walking through that's already turning green, and I don't know if it's invasive, not invasive, native, non-native. I have no idea. I'm just a guy. So um, first, let's kind of talk 30,000 feet. um, what does non-native and native mean, and then we'll get into invasive, because invasive could mean native, right?
It could be a native. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so let's just
And
talk about
just
native and non-native up front.
yeah, non-native is something that was brought typically from overseas, maybe from a different region. But the ones that we battle the most are non-native invasive species. A lot of them come from Eastern Russia and Asia, and they outcompete the native flora in such a way that it seriously degrades the wildlife habitat. And even though in the early stages of some of those plants' lives here, they might serve a purpose for browse and cover, the issue is they multiply at such a rate that it in a relatively short amount of time, the quality of the habitat goes down drastically. So when you're talking about especially in our turkey numbers and our quail and pheasant numbers when we're already lacking in the amount of available habitat. If it's not made up of the right stuff, and usually the not right stuff is the invasive species, then step one is always going to be to identify that and then figure out how to eradicate it.
So
So I'm
why
pretty
do
sure I
they?
answered the question there. But.
Yeah, you did. Why do they outcompete the native plants? I know. Well, let me ask you this: are there some non-natives that don't outcompete? Because I feel like everything I hear about with non-native is they come in and they just take over everything. But my mind is: are there non-natives that are just plants and they don't do damage? I
Yeah,
don't ever hear
yeah.
about
I
them
mean,
because they probably don't do damage. But
they're not the ones doing damage. Yeah, there are certain non-native plants, trees especially, um, things like hostas and all that kind of stuff that you see around your house that aren't as prolific spreaders as the invasives that we deal with out in the ecosystem. But my thinking is if you have the opportunity to do something to move things in the right direction, to do a little research in even things that you can get at Menards and Lowe's and farm stores, they still sell things that are invasive, that the birds eat the berries, they go and poop in your woods, and then there's your source of loss of habitat right there. So um, to answer that question,
so
yes, there are non-natives that aren't problems, um, but a lot of them are. And we could
and
run right into this. The second part of that was why is it that they are that way?
yeah.
Um, they there's several reasons. A lot of them put on a lot of seeds. So like, well, I won't get too much into the species. I'll just answer the question. A lot of them put off a lot of seeds. A lot of them um, are allelopathic, and they send out chemicals through the root system that help them to outcompete the native species and can hinder and even kill some of the plants that are from here based on chemicals that they put out. A lot of them germinate earlier, so they put their leaves on early, like we were just talking about, which
Hmm.
shades out everything else, or they hold on to the leaves longer, and it kind of does the same effect on the tail end of the growing season too. So those are kind of three of the more common reasons that they are invasive.
Hmm. So basically, every time you drive to my house and you see the two pear trees in my front yard, the Bradford pears or whatever, you're like, you son of a bitch. One of these days, you're just
Yeah.
gonna come bring a chainsaw and cut them down, aren't you?
Well, I will gladly do that.
My
You
wife
should
would kill you.
get in touch with the conservation department. They have a buyback program that you could, if you wanted to do it in phases, you cut one down and get a free tree.
Really?
You just don't show them that you still have five more. I don't know how that works, and I can't speak for their program, but
We only
you
have
should.
two. We only have two.
Oh, well, might as well just cut them both and get at least one free one,
That's a
and
good point. Good point.
put something
Um,
native next to your driveway.
that's interesting that the non-natives, a lot of them do those things, keep their leaves longer, leaf earlier. Allelopathic with their root systems. I mean, I guess it's just how they were bred to compete where they're from. I'm assuming, and just they come over here and I mean, do you know why they're that way? It just seems like don't take this the wrong way when I say this. It just seems like the non-native plants are the badasses, and our native plants are like the bitches. Like why are our plants so weak compared to the ones from Russia, China, or whatever that come over and we plant them and then they just take over an entire landscape? Like, is there a reason behind that, or just that's just how they are?
You know, going back to the origin of those other plants, whatever about the growing conditions from their home regions made them that way, I'm not sure. But when they are subjected to our ecosystem and things that used to happen, be it fire, flood, um, that kind of thing, we don't have those natural controls and disturbances to keep things in check the way that we used to.
Yeah.
And when they're introduced to an environment without natural disturbance and control, then they just proliferate.
My thought is like I kind of picture them coming from more harsh areas, and then they get to a very mild area like Missouri, which people might consider Missouri not mild, but it is. I mean, we have
Hmm.
mild winters overall. A good spring, good fall. Summer is obviously summer. So like here, it's easy for them. They get over here and they're like, "Oh, this is simple. Like this is so much easier
Right.
than where I'm from." So they just blow up. But of course, they don't talk to themselves. I'm guessing. But
Oh,
um,
yeah. There's some pretty cool documentaries out there.
is there? I'll have to watch some of them. So
Yeah.
that's
What
non-native versus
one of them?
native. Go ahead.
I was just say one of them's called "What Plants Talk About," so you can write that one down as a neat one to watch.
What
It's
plants
got a
talk
lot
about?
of high definition plants talking to each other in motion. Check that one
That's
out.
crazy. I'll have to. So then let's move into invasive. Invasive. So you've got non-native versus native, and then what makes a plant invasive? Did we pretty much already cover that with what you had said, or is there more to it?
Yeah, essentially, it's something that outcompetes the native flora or the desired flora uh, of whatever ecosystem that you're working within.
Because
So
invasive could be native, right?
it could be native, yeah. And the most
Okay,
common one and one that's a hot topic is cedar trees.
gotcha. Well, let's get into that. So, what are the most prevalent? I don't, we don't need like a top 10 or whatever, but we can just cover like what are the most prevalent invasive species in Missouri or non-native invasive, whatever, however you want to handle it. What are the ones that
Yeah.
you see the most of?
So especially in this corner of the state, it changes a little bit when you get down close to the Boot Heel and the southern part of the Ozarks. But um, bush honeysuckle is, I'm going to say, probably the most, that one, and now Bradford pear with there's kind of a movement going on to try to eradicate Bradford pears from being planted. But I'd say those two right now are the most prevalent. Um, both are grassland invaders, and bush honeysuckle is also a timberland invader. So it's very diverse in where it can establish. It moves faster in the timber from what I see.
Hmm.
Just being shade tolerant, and you'll get into the woods, and the only thing in there is honeysuckle. Um, so top two probably right now, and at least the general public is somewhat aware of, are those two. Some other ones, grassland specific, Sericea lespedeza.
You
If
say
you're
that a lot. Yeah, I
a
was gonna say I got to hear
yeah,
that word.
it's a pain in the butt. They all are, but that's primarily a grassland invader. But if you have openings in the forest, it can be there too. Um, Tree of Heaven is one that is an ornamental tree that has been planted for years and years, puts on thousands of seeds per tree, and especially in disturbed soil sites next to roadways, new construction, that kind of thing, they'll take off. They're rhizomal, which a lot of even native trees are, but you cut the top off of it and don't do anything, you're going to get 100 sprouts down the leg of the roots that direction, and real pain. uh,
Damn.
Hate that one. Smells really bad. Um,
But it's called Tree of
Man, I
Heaven.
could
That's funny.
treat. Yeah, they need to rename it.
Yeah.
Um,
What about the one
multi
everybody hears about now? Cedars.
cedars. So that's back to the native side,
It is native,
and
right? Okay.
yep, yep. So historically, cedars were kept in check by fire, and um, we don't have large scale fire anymore. Um, a lot of fire itself is becoming a more popular management tool, which is a good thing, and that is an effective tool as long as the tree is not too big at killing a cedar. Because if you get it hot enough to at least scorch the green part of the tree where it's not able to do photosynthesis anymore, then you effectively kill that cedar. Same as if you cut a cedar, as long as you get everything that's green on it, it's dead.
Hmm.
So That's a native invasive. So when you're managing a grassland, um, it's okay to have some in certain areas. Get into the topography talk a little bit, like the third line where the drainage touches, all that kind of stuff. If you're trying to isolate some bedding activity, leave a few here and there, but in general, with fire, you want to keep the cedar population in check.
So
So,
that is a native plant technically. It's been here.
yep, yep,
It's just gotten out of control because of the reduction in fires over the last couple hundred years. As
yep.
we've become more, I guess, civilized, as you would say. We're able to stop fire. But
Afraid of fire.
yeah, back to non-native. You were just getting ready to say, I think, multiflora rose. Is that right?
Yep, yep. That's a grass and woodland invader. I think you kind of see it more prevalent in like creek bottoms, and low-lying areas in the timber, especially in areas that used to be cattle pasture. For whatever reason, it just blows up in old cattle pasture. Um, that one's a little bit, I mean, it's a real pain to try to walk through it. Obviously, the thorns hook onto you and rip into your skin, and you have to kind of roll backwards out of it if you get caught by one. But um, a fire does a pretty good job of knocking it back, and then you're looking for little resprouts when you go to finish the job on that one. And spraying it with a brush killer is effective. So I'm kind of diving into some of the other parts of this, but
Yeah, that's
that's just
okay.
another one that I see a lot of, especially our
When we
area of
walked,
the our area of the
when we
state.
walked through the spot that I hunt over at Andy's, is that what was there a lot? Multiflora rose? Do you
At
remember?
Andy's, yeah, yep,
Yeah, because that was an old
behind his
cattle
place.
pasture. Yeah, that
Yep,
was a little cattle pasture up top, and that would make sense because
yep.
I remember walking through that one time, and it was just like enveloped me, and it was horrible. I am mowing it right now. I need to burn it. I need to convince him to let us just start a fire on one end of the timber and let it travel through. But
Yep. He
anyways, but
also had he also had a lot of Japanese honeysuckle, which is the vine version of bush honeysuckle,
gotcha.
essentially. And it climbs the trees and kind of makes curtains, and it's
Yeah, it
kind of kind of
does.
kind of back to, there is a certain cover value there, but it's more of a limiting factor than it is a benefit. You want that cover to be native grasses and forbs that grow 6 feet tall, provide food at the same time as cover, and Japanese honeysuckle does not do that.
Yeah, there was that one spot where it was on the bottom side. I don't know if you remember, but it was like a carpet of it, like
Hmm.
50 yards wide by 50 yards wide, and it was just nothing but that. Nothing else was growing. It was just that. I think it was that honeysuckle. It was kind of like it was like a vine, but it was only ground
Yeah,
the
it's like
whole
a
time,
mat.
like a
Yep.
mat. Yeah, yeah. But okay, so those are some of the most prevalent ones. I'd like to go back to each and have you try to explain what they look like for the listener. Um, so bush honeysuckle, kind of give the if you're walking through your property and you're like, oh, I don't want to, I'll do it myself. I'm not paying Dustin to come out and do this for me. I'm an idiot. I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Why, like, what can they look for when they're looking for some of these? So let's start with bush honeysuckle, which is the first one I wrote down. What are some features about it that you can tell what it is?
Um, so for me, it's, you look at the bark. If it's the winter time when it doesn't have leaves, which is a short window of time anymore, uh, it's got, they have good technical ways to determine it, but I has a yellowish appearance to it, a light tan, and it's shaped like an umbrella, which is kind of another common theme that you see. The multiflora rose will kind of umbrella out, and so it has that shape to it. I'm thinking of a couple more that I didn't mention before, but
Well, we
uh,
can add them at the end. That's fine. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we're recording this on April 3rd. Right now in the woods, everything that is as tall as your head or smaller, there's a decent chance that it's bush honeysuckle. No thorns. Um, without a actual visual, it's kind of hard to just.
Yeah, it's a little harder. Yeah, podcast is not easy, but
Yeah, I was thinking if I could share a screen or something, at least for the YouTube
um,
people. I don't know if that would work or not,
I,
but
I've never tried that. I probably could. I can.
probably need to do a
Here,
trial run before we commit
as
to
you're
it.
gonna you that's a great idea, Dustin. Look at you being all smart. I'm gonna Google bush honeysuckle, and then I'm gonna share my screen. And yep, I bet that's right. So okay, we'll see if this works. YouTube world, bear with us. We'll see what happens here. I've never done this on a show. Doing it live. Share screen. Uh, of course. Well, keep going. So we're at bush honeysuckle right now. I gotta open system
um,
settings. Apparently. Oh, here we go. I gotta say yes.
Permissions.
Yep, I gotta permit. That's a hell of an idea, dude. I didn't even think of that. See if that works. All right, perfect. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna do it again. Share screen. Okay, can you share? Can you see that?
I can see it.
Well, we'll see if
I don't know.
the. So is this a good representation of bush honeysuckle right
Yeah,
here?
yeah, absolutely. And so you've got pictures there of when it's in flower. So it's very aromatic, smells really good. Oh, your
Yep.
tab bar looks like mine.
Yeah, I'm closing some of them so people can actually see what we're doing.
Yeah, that's great there though.
So
White and
this
yellow
is bush
flowers,
honeysuckle right here.
smells really
Okay.
good. Yep. Um, yeah, take a look. Super dense, um, bright green leaves. Even in the growing season, when everything's green, the bush honeysuckle itself stands out to, at least to me, looking against every other plant that's there. And then so it goes into flower in May, early June, and towards the end of the summer, you'll have the berries there, which is what happens after pollination. Um,
Yep.
Ton of red berries, and that's the main reason that honeysuckle spreads. It's the birds and stuff eat the berries and they poop them out.
Yeah, I think I got a lot of that there. That's for sure.
So
Okay,
yeah,
so we don't really, I
we
guess,
could
need to
keep this
explain.
rolling.
Yeah, Bradford, which I know people know what a Bradford pear looks like, but we're still gonna do it. Images. So if you're looking in the landscape right now, and all you got to do is look out across the timber, and you're gonna see a bunch of white trees
Hmm.
with flowers on them. That is these guys. So
Most of them,
most
yes.
of them, yep. And this is happens to be a
The
picture of a cemetery, YouTube world. So sorry, but
yeah, but that's a good example of why for one they were planted in the first place because they are visually appealing. They're bright white
mhm.
and put on a lot of flowers. You actually see a lot of these in the open grasslands. I know if I drive down by the airport in Kansas City on the side of the road, there's just solid stands of calorie pear. Same deal. They put on a lot of berries. If you cut them off and you don't treat them, there's going to be a lot more trees that pop up. The native and good alternative to this is a wild plum, an American plum. It's actually a shrub, and you can buy it from MDC. And if you want white flowers in the spring, they're white right now too. Not quite as bright, snowy white, but still a good looking plant.
Yeah. So I mean, I think most people are aware of what a Bradford pear looks like, but I don't. I think what a lot of people don't realize is how invasive it can be. So what does a
Yep.
Bradford pear do? Like, why is it such a problem,
Yeah.
and why do you hate them so much?
Same same deal without disturbance, and even once they get established, like if you only burn, it's going to grow back. And so you're either taking a skid loader and a tree puller and pulling the whole root system out, works pretty good. But they put on a ton of berries, ton of fruit, and that helps them establish. And they also are rhizomal, I believe. If you cut it off, you're going to get a ton more that grow up past it.
Gotcha. All right, so you're
Um,
gonna have to help
and
me spell. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to tie it back to habitat too, is they grow so densely in such a short amount of time that the first thing that's affected are like your quail and your pheasants and turkeys, the nesting birds that are so fragile and what they need anyways. And then a deer, I mean, you're a 180-inch deer trying to move through a thicket out in the grassland that should be like wild plum and a bunch of other ones. I'm not trying to take my big showy rack through a grove of Bradford pears. And on top of that, there's no browse value.
Gotcha. All right, you're gonna have to help me spell this next one. Sericea. Does it start
S
with a
E
C?
R I, no, Seri,
Oh, there it is, right
and
there.
then, yep, right there.
That is not how I would have spelled it. So is this it right here?
Yep.
So
So
this is
major
Sericea lespedeza.
grassland invader. Oh yeah, this is the MDC page that you just clicked on,
Is it?
which I
Yeah.
was going to reference earlier. Yeah, that's if anybody watching, if you want to learn more about it, go to the MDC page and search for invasive species, and it'll talk about control methods and economic problems, all the things that make these things awful the way they are.
So, I wouldn't have
Um,
noticed that as an invasive species. Whenever you said that word, I had no idea what you're talking about. Now I get it. I've seen this picture right here. If people are watching, I've seen this before, and I just assumed it was like,
yeah,
oh, whatever that is. It's like a bush. That is
yeah,
Sericea lespedeza or whatever the hell you say. Uh,
yep.
and that's why it's a
That one where
grassland
your
invader.
cursor,
Yeah.
yep, your cursor's on right now is moderate. A lot of times in those open areas, it is nothing but, and every single little frond of that Sericea lespedeza puts on thousands of seeds every year, and their seeds are viable for something like 30 years in the soil. Um, when you talk about management of Sericea lespedeza, you a lot of times you think, well, I need to burn in the spring, and you are allowing Sericea lespedeza to proliferate. It actually benefits from a spring burn. It clears the surface, and all the seeds that were underneath those plants last year are like, hell yeah, time to go.
Let's go.
So that could be bad, and it also could be a tool to help you more effectively control the population when you do go to spray. So you burn it on purpose, knowing that there's a bunch of Sericea there. You want as many of the seeds as possible to germinate. So then you put a lot more dollar amount in killing that plant effectively the first year of treating it than you would if you just went in and treated it and didn't do anything else. Because if you only treat what's there currently, that whole crop underneath still has the opportunity to come back the next year, and it might seem like you didn't do anything.
Huh. I wouldn't have known that. I mean, that's where someone with your expertise comes in because I would just be like, let's go spray these. And then next year, when they're just as bad, you're like, well, what the hell? Well, it's
Yeah,
because the seeds you didn't kill the seeds.
right. And
Yeah.
back to that, I don't want to say that only spraying is bad, but if you do only spray, and especially in the first couple of years, you have to do it 2 or 3 times a growing season, because there's going to be some that are underneath of the mature plant that you didn't get. And so you'll kill them, and it'll look for a couple of weeks like, oh yeah, I got a lot of them. And then you'll come back a month later, and there'll be another crop kind of starting to pop up through what you already sprayed. There'll be probably some on the edges of what you sprayed that are popping up. Um, it's just a
Hmm.
heck of a deal. And then one more thing about, if you do burn, if you are trying to more effectively control the population with a fire, it's good to burn through a Sericea infestation in the later growing season. So end of July through September.
Gotcha.
That does a better job of actually setting back that that community of those plants.
Hmm. I like the way we're doing this, going through each one, showing the picture, and we'll talk about how to control it. I like that. We should probably
Yep,
have went back
yep.
to bush honeysuckle because I don't know that we did that on that one, but
Oh, we yeah, it's all right.
we kind of did. Yeah, tree of heaven. Okay, next one, tree of heaven. Tree.
Tree of heaven.
There it is. So this is tree of heaven.
Yep.
Tree of heaven looks like a fern almost to me.
Yep. If you're in an urban or suburban area and you have flower beds and things like that, and you have little tree sprouts that tend to pop up, there's a good chance that one of these is in there. Disturbed soil is where they start out. I think I mentioned earlier they put on a ton of seeds. Later in the summer, if you see one of these and you know what you're looking for, there'll be a clump of seeds on every branch that's about the size of a football, and there's hundreds, if not 1,000 or so seeds in each of those clumps. Um, you can kind of tell that they look similar to a walnut, and so sometimes people will mistake the young ones for a walnut and let them go on purpose. Um, if you're not sure if it's young enough and you can break one of those branches and take a whiff of it, it is awful smelling, like a rotten bone broth or something. And that's one way to tell. And then as far as treatment goes, the best thing to do is to basally spray these. So what that means is you take an herbicide, which is going to be triclopyr, remedy or garlon are trade names of triclopyr. You mix it with an oil carrier, and this all depends on which one you get, so you have to read the label. And I've been using Garlon 4, which is a higher percentage triclopyr, and diesel fuel at 20%. That's as technical as I'm going to get with that one for what I've been using. You take your backpack sprayer with that mix, and you spray the bottom foot to 18 inches all the way around each stem, and that will soak into the bark. And these have really thin bark on them, almost looks like skin, and that'll effectively kill a tree of heaven.
Hmm.
You can cut and spray them, but if you cut them in the dormant season and spray them, they heal at a faster rate than a lot of trees, and that chemical might not set into the growth layers of the tree as good as it needs to get all the way to the roots. And these are rhizomal as well, so if it doesn't get all the way out to the tip of every root, that part that still has some energy in it is going to shoot a new stem up, and you'll be dealing with the same problem.
I like if you're watching on YouTube, which I would highly suggest because this is the first time we've done this, and this is pretty nice. Devilishly invasive tree of heaven on that website right there.
Yep.
I don't know if you can see that, but okay. So tree of heaven next. We all know what a cedar tree looks like, but hey, I like what we're doing. So boom. If you don't know, now you know. There's a cedar tree. I don't know how to make it bigger, so I'm just going to stay right here with everybody. Cedar tree.
Yep. Not all evergreens are pines. Not all evergreens are cedars. So there are differences. In our area of the state, you might see some, I think it's shortleaf pines. Some of my folks are going to get mad at me for not knowing for sure, but cedar trees, though, they proliferate a lot like these species do without fire and active mechanical management. Um, Easier to control as long as you don't wait 30 years to start controlling them. When you see them popping up, if you can run a fire through there, you're gonna take care of your cedars. Um, Also, if you cut one down, as long as you cut everything that's green off of that tree, that tree is dead.
Yeah. And you can see, I mean,
Um,
like scrolling through, some of these have been trimmed to make them look more like what I would call a pine. Um, but I mean, if you let them, it looks like their foliage is gonna kind of go to the ground. And is that their biggest thing that they do is they just kill everything that is underneath them. I mean, like if you go under a
So
cedar tree, there's nothing there except for needles.
so when one thing I'll say about cedar trees that I will not say about any of the non-native invasives is that there are a place for cedar trees. And what they do is they provide thermal cover. Um, and in some instances, well, that's pretty much the main thing that they do is provide thermal cover. But yes, if you get too many cedars in an area, you've probably seen, if you're a hunter listening, you've probably seen cedar thickets where you can actually see through the trees themselves, and everything that is growing is up above your head. Um, that is that is the problem, is they create a lot of shade and don't allow for other native, more valuable species um, take hold. And you can get a lot of cover benefit out of a lot of other native species.
Gotcha. All right. Let's see. Next one, multiflora rose. See if I can spell this right. Multi. Well, thank you, Google. Is this multiflora rose? It looks like it.
Yeah, I think I might have seen one that was actually black raspberry. So that's the problem with the internet. It's not always right. But
Right.
uh, it's like you said, it's for my screen, it's a little grainy just because it's trying to keep up with the recording. But
Yeah.
that is what it looks like in an open setting. It's just a bush full of white or even pink. Actually, there is a native prairie rose that's pink too, but definitely white is something that you want to look for. Um, Fire in along with herbicide is the best way to go. Yeah, yeah, it will be a curtain like some of those others at times on the edges, especially in what used to be cattle pastures.
Gotcha.
Also creek bottoms and that type of thing. And so the
And
creek bottom
it's
issue is
got
that,
thorns, right?
yep, the thorns on a
Yep.
multiple rows are the ones that hook you. Um, Compared to, like you mentioned earlier before we were live, gooseberry, for instance, is a native shrub, um, and it can become invasive without proper management, like fire, and will outcompete all the tender browse that a deer or a turkey would prefer. But those thorns on the gooseberry are straight and black, and if you walk through them, you'll probably pull about 10 out of your shins. But multiflora rose has the curved thorns. It pretty much stops you in your tracks when you're walking through it, and you have to either pick it off or roll out like you're a running back to get out of it. So
Yep. Yep.
I was
I
gonna I
hate
was
that.
gonna
I hate
mention
that
one of the
shit.
yeah yeah one of the things about it being pretty proliferate in creek bottoms is, I mean, that's the highlight area for wildlife, is a creek bottom, right? Like you can set up on a creek bottom and know that a deer's going to come down in the evening, catch those down thermals, and go about his way. But if it's all full of multiflora rows, he might be able to find a way through there, but it's not going to be as much of a hot spot as it could be.
Makes sense. Japanese honeysuckle, which I know we've done bush honeysuckle, but Japanese honey. There it is. So, um, I don't know if you can see that very good with the, but is that kind of, yeah, that looks like what you
Yeah,
showed me at Andy's. So this is Japanese
yep.
honeysuckle,
It's a little
folks.
little little harder to tell the difference between that and bush honeysuckle from these pictures, but the main difference is it grows more like a vine, and will grow all up on trees, especially on like edges where there's a lot of sunlight, or certain stands of trees where they don't put leaves on as early. It kind of gets a head start, and eventually it'll grow all up and pull that tree down and kill it. Is what will happen. Outcompetes all the native stuff, and again, this is a combination of herbicide and fire Fire in most instances is just to knock stuff back, and then to fully kill it, you're going to be treating it with an herbicide. And I haven't had to actually work with this one in any of my projects, so reference the MDC site and other um, legitimate resources and figure out what the best method is.
So this is kind of like a almost like a suffocator. Like
Yep.
it'll wrap around a tree almost like an anaconda, like just suffocate it and kill it. Hmm.
Yep.
Now you were going to add some other ones to the list before we kind of started doing this. So what's some other ones you were talking about?
Yep. I got two. One of them is more like this one, so we'll do that one first, and it is winter creeper.
Winter creeper. Oh man, I'm really worried about hitting enter on this this search. Okay, it's this is
We're all adults here, I think.
yeah. Is this the
Well,
stuff we saw over at Andy's all over the ground? I'm
yeah.
pretty sure
Yep.
this is what it is. Yeah.
By
Winter
the
creeper.
shale piles, maybe.
Yep, yep.
Um, but even there, go back up to the top.
Okay.
My screen's not following yet, but one of the suggestions is ground cover, and that's part of the issue is that there's still a lot of places out there telling people that this kind of thing is okay, and it's not. And you said it pretty much, and you can see in the picture there, it's ground cover. It
There's no grass.
outcompetes everything. And then this one will also climb up trees. And if you've got parks in the city, a lot of times out like here where I live in Northwest Missouri by the river, there's patches of this stuff that's pretty thick. And if it is growing up a tree, you cut the vine, you treat it like you would a tree, and try not to get into the tree that you're trying to save with your chainsaw. That's a good way to at least keep it off of the trees. And then when it's thick like that, you have to go in and spray it because you're not going to be able to burn. And you might be able to burn leaf litter that's on top of it, but it's just going to blow up. So you have to spray it.
So this is kind of what winter creeper does. If you can see, the side of this house was on the
Yep.
ground and now it's
And
creeping up.
for these folks, they were doing that intentionally, but
Yeah,
it's
probably.
same thing that makes it a problem out in the ecosystem.
So I think here's a perfect example, Dustin. Once you can see the picture, let me know. Here is I
Yeah, I
think
see it.
maybe an oak tree, and that creeper is just taking it over.
Yep. And it'll climb up and suffocate that tree eventually.
Hmm. Damn. All right, what's the next one?
The other one that I thought of is autumn olive, and it's more like bush honeysuckle.
Autumn olive. All right, so is that one?
Yep.
Once you can see it.
Yep. So
So
similar structure. I think I mentioned kind of an umbrella shape to the bush honeysuckle. It kind of grows up and arches out. Autumn olive definitely does that. These things, you'll see them out. The difference between this one and bush honeysuckle and characteristic is they tongue tied, proliferate more in grassland or an edge setting. So you'll see these mature with like cedars and other grassland invaders that, what that basically says is at a certain point they stop either mowing or grazing or burning that grassland, and then everything kind of took off from there. Um, you'll see them on the edges of the woods some, but they don't typically move into a stand of woods because they start in open areas. And then treatment's going to be the same. It's a combination of everything: cutting and spraying. Burning helps to set it back. Basil spray works on almost anything that we've talked about. It would be kind of hard to do on the viney stuff, but the rose, the honeysuckle, the olive, the tree of heaven, the Bradford pear, basil spray will work on all of those up to a certain point. The Bradford pears, their bark would get too thick, but um, Yeah, that's this is another one. You can see how many berries it puts on. That's part of the reason. Um,
Yeah,
Birds
I'm
out
looking
in
at
the
this
open
picture
field
too.
are going to land there, eat them, poop them out, and then you got more. Uh,
Yeah,
one
that's a
one
lot
way
of
to
berries
dis
right there.
yeah, yeah. One way to distinguish these from other plants, it's pretty easy. If you're driving down the highway, they're almost like a minty green color, and that's because you're seeing both the tops and the bottoms of some of the leaves when you're at a distance. And in some of these pictures, you can see that the underside of those leaves are silvery, makes them appear lighter.
Yeah, kind of like in
Some people,
this picture here. It's the underside of the leaf on one side and the top side on the other.
yep. Um, some people call this Russian olive, but it is from Eastern Europe, I believe. But the more accurate Russian olive is actually a tree, and that's what you'll see if you say you're going out west to elk hunt. There's all these silvery looking trees in Nebraska or western Kansas. Those are probably Russian olives. These are autumn olives.
Oh yeah, those look a little different. So it's a big tree. I mean,
Yeah, they get big.
yeah,
Not
interesting.
not in not in the Missouri woods and water home range, but
Not in our home range, but they're there.
yep.
All right, what? So we've got bush honeysuckle, Bradford pears, Sericea lespedeza, tree of heaven, cedars, multiflora rose, Japanese honeysuckle, autumn olive, and there was one in the middle that I didn't write down of autumn olive and Japanese honeysuckle. But um, those are kind of all. What the hell was that one? It's kind of bothering me now that I don't remember.
Winter creeper.
Winter creeper. Yeah, that's right. What else do you can you think of in our state or our general area that is an invasive or are those kind of the heavy hitters, we'll say.
Those so one thing that we didn't talk much about are wetland invasives.
Okay,
Um, let's just do that.
let's do it.
And some of these will find their way into those wetland ecosystems, but there's some heavy hitters in the wetlands that we didn't talk
For
about.
you duck hunters out there.
Yeah, reed canary grass is going to be the most prominent one, and for us deer hunters, it doesn't really seem like much of an issue, but it's kind of the same thing.
This?
Yep.
Well, that just looks like
When
grass to
when
me.
you yeah when you go to most of your whether you're going to one of our big muddy national wildlife refuge areas that we can hunt or your smaller conservation areas that have a riparian area on them, a river bottom area, and that real loud swishy grass that you walk through is reed canary grass. And what it is a hybrid of a non-native and a native, and same as all the other ones. Puts on a ton of seeds, just grows in a mat and doesn't let a lot of other stuff grow.
Hmm.
Um, as far as controlling it, it worked a couple years at Kansas Wildlife and Parks in their river bottom areas up uh, close to St. Joe. The best thing that we did was burn it and then follow up when it got to be about 6 to 8 inches tall with just glyphosate and nuke it. And then you're going to have a whole explosion of probably river bottom type wildflowers and that community. Um, but not as bad in the open parts of the river bottoms. But the problem is if you have river bottom timber and you try to do any timber management there, this and the other ones will make that tricky.
Huh, I did not know that. I just assumed that was grass. I mean, it is
Right.
grass, but I just assumed it was good. I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah, not you're not going to have quail in there. Uh, Turkey broods aren't going to do well in there. They might nest in it, but they're not going to have their
Is it
young in the reed canary grass.
Is it just because it's so thick that even they can't see or get around in it?
Yeah, it's super thick.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
This one reminds me of another major one that I left out in the last part, but it's more prominent in the river bottoms, so we can go there. You
Do it.
probably know this one, Johnson grass.
I've heard of it.
Grasses are a little bit harder to tell in
To
pictures
distinguish,
probably, but
yeah, like to
yeah,
me, it looks like grass.
right.
Is
Yeah.
this a nice representation of what Johnson grass looks like when it's small, like that taller,
Yep.
thick stuff right there?
Yep. Yep. It almost looks like a little corn plant.
Yeah, yeah.
So they make a Johnson grass selective herbicide called Outrider, and it's pelletized, so it's granulated. Uh, little comes in like 20-ounce bottles, and for that 20-ounce bottle, you're going to pay about $480. Um, I off the top of my head, I don't know the mixing rate, but again, read the label. Label is the law. What that does is if you have Johnson grass in your good warm season grasses, or um, yeah, mainly for that reason. If you want to kill only Johnson grass and not your blue stem and Indian grass and some of that other stuff, or even pasture grass for that matter, it will only kill Johnson grass. The other option or options are glyphosate at a heavy rate, and that's where you know that you can target that plant specifically. But an issue there is that some of this is starting or has well established um, immunity to glyphosate, and so that presents quite the challenge. Um, and that comes from the agriculture world. If you don't spray every bit of it and part of it lives and survives, then you have a little bit of immunity to resistance to the chemical.
That's interesting. I didn't know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's almost like catching the chicken pox or something. You don't die from it. You get stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, again, a deer can utilize Johnson grass pretty well as bedding in some situations. It gets to a point where, I mean, they're not going to go deep into a giant stand of Johnson grass, but they'll butt right up against it. Um, but your turkeys and quail and pheasants, they're not going to enjoy Johnson grass.
Hmm. Interesting. I think I've got some Johnson grass in
Um,
my grass outside, actually.
yeah, probably. Um, let's see, wetland invaders. Japanese hops.
Japanese hops. There it is. Trying to find like a full. That just looks like weed. Just trying to find like a full.
Yeah,
Is that?
yeah, those are all good representations. You can see the seeds there. You can see what the leaf looks like. If you've ever hunted some river bottom ground, or even, this will move into upland areas if given the opportunity. Um, Grows on a vine, can do the whole carpet thing like we've seen before. Sorry, I keep getting really close to the camera because I'm looking at your little pictures, but
That's all right.
uh, it'll climb up all over trees and take them out, and it just outcompetes everything. So a couple unique things about it and where it could seem beneficial is specifically in the river bottoms. I've seen where this stuff will grow over like deadfall and trees and create curtains and caves and things like that that deer definitely bed in. And throughout the summer, especially the early part of the year, they'll browse it too, but they don't knock it back at all, and it just becomes the only thing that grows there. And by the end of the growing season, it's 2 or 3 feet tall, and you just get all wrapped up in it, and it's not good for wildlife. Um, and then turkeys love, before it takes off like crazy, they love to eat the seeds of these things. So there, if you're out hunting public land and you see this stuff, it's not a bad idea to hunt next to it. But when you're talking about full scale habitat management, trying to protect the resource and keep things in a balance, it's something you want to look out for. And spraying this stuff with 2,4-D when it's pretty young is a good way to kill it.
And that'll take it all the way through its root system, like just topical spray, and it'll kill the plant that way.
Yep, yep. It responds well to just being sprayed with 2,4-D, and you can start that with a burn too. If you have a solid stand like what we see there as a carpet, it's all going to just green up after the burn. That's when you come back and hit it with 2,4-D.
So like, yeah, this big picture I've got right here, you would want to spray everything you see with 2,4-D? Is that one big
Yeah,
plant, or is that just a bunch of them?
well, I assume that it's all genetically identical or very closely related in that area.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
just
Cool.
grows like a mat, and I think it's something like 3 to 6 feet, maybe even more than that. I need to call my buddy Jesse. He's wetland knowledge base, but it grows a lot every year. I'll say that.
Gotcha.
Three to six sounds like a small number.
Hmm. I don't think I've ever seen that one. Maybe I have
Um,
just walked right by it.
yeah, there was one more. Oh, Phragmites, P
Oh
H
gosh.
R
Frag.
A
Right there.
G.
Thanks, Google.
Yep.
Just looks like another grass.
Yeah, this one would definitely stand out if you saw it on the roadway, and you do see it in roadways quite a bit, even here in Missouri. Um, but it's a wetland invader. The reason you see it in roadways is because a lot of times water will sit and stand in between the two lanes of traffic or under the bridge, and that's where it gets its start. Um, it puts on a ton of seeds, and that is one way that it gets rolling, but it's a pretty heavy rhizomal spreader as well uh, through the root system. And I didn't get to work with this one a lot. I know it's a real pain in the butt to kill. Um, I think the most success that we had was with kind of like a permanent weed killer that lasts up to a year, which obviously isn't good for the environment if you have to kill a spot for a year and not have anything growing there. But again, reference the website, the MDC invasives page. That'll get you rolling. Call your DNR and wetland specialist, and they'll tell you the right thing for sure. I don't see a ton of it out working, but I'll see it driving down the highway quite a bit. And it's big time established up north. So if you go up in the Great Lakes region, um, it's all over the place.
Hmm. So yeah, Phragmites, Johnson grass, and reed canary grass, like they all just look like grass. Now this Phragmites definitely looks different than the other two to me.
Hmm.
Looks like it just almost, you know, it's so prevalent in the pictures that I'm looking at. It's almost like it's supposed to be there, but
Yeah,
it's taken over that area, is what
right,
it's done. Seems
right.
like, yeah,
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I
interesting.
don't know. It's just something that if you have say a river bottom farm or something and you see a patch of it, do what you can to keep it at bay.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, it's takes over everything.
Yep. It looks like it does because in the pictures we're looking at here on YouTube, it's the only thing you see. I'm gonna see what this picture is. There's a lady standing there. You see that one? How tall that Phragmites
Yep.
is?
Yep.
Yeah, I would not enjoy walking through that. I mean, can you imagine trying to walk through that?
Yeah. It's not fun. I've done it.
Yeah, I bet.
Luckily, not a giant patch or anything where it's 20 acres of it, but you know, trying to effectively manage this stuff and Yeah, it's invasive for a reason, and it's a problem for a reason, and that picture is a pretty good example of that.
Right. Okay, so we have named and Googled 13 different invasive species that are, common, prevalent in Missouri. There are probably what dozens, if not hundreds, more
Oh
that
yeah.
maybe aren't as a problem, or maybe aren't as problematic in our general area as they are, like you said, in southern Missouri, the Boot Hill area. But this is little.
Um,
I'm gonna stop my share screen unless you got more to do, but um, this is just kind of a perfect example of all the stuff that can cause issues with your particular farm or area, and what you can do to knock it back. Um, I'm going to give Dustin all the credit on that one. That was a good idea. Picture, this is what it looks like. This is what it does. This is how you control it. Obviously those are small little tidbits about each one. Do more research on each one, and what you can do. Dustin talked about going to the MDC website. I'm gonna see if this works. I've never tried this before. Stop presenting. Yeah, there you and I are. All right. Um, Go to the MDC website, do more reading. So it's just MDC and then invasive species. Like if you search it, you'll find that sort of stuff.
yep, yep.
Nice.
I'll send you a link when we get off here that you can put with the episode.
Nice. Okay.
Um,
Cool.
just a quick thing on my end. The reason this all matters, especially with what I do, is you can go into a property, whether it's a new property or one that you've been on for a long time, and think, well, I'm going to do all these things to make this place better. But if you don't first identify some of these that you likely have, well, another one just jumped out at me that we didn't touch, and it's probably the biggest contributor to turkey and quail habitat loss, and that's
Well,
just
let's share that screen again. I
lawn
will do it.
grass. I mean, you really don't probably even have to, but um, pasture grass, brome, Kentucky bluegrass. The first thing that gets green after you do a burn in the spring, that's the biggest contributor to habitat loss for our turkeys and our quail and pheasants. So again, why that matters is you need to identify what the limiting factors to your habitat is, and then go and manage accordingly after you identify and target those.
There's Dustin.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know. I tried to share my screen and it just like disappeared. So I'm not doing it again.
Did we lose me on that whole thing?
Yeah, like my studio, the studio that we're using to record this just stopped. So um,
Uh,
you were saying lawn grass, and then I went to share the screen, and I was going to Google it again, and everything disappeared. So we're not
yeah,
going to do that. You can just explain it.
yeah, not a big deal. I don't think it's necessary for this one. You do a prescribed burn in the spring, the most common time to do your burns. The first thing that comes up green and beautiful, the turkeys seem to want to strut and be there, is actually bad for your turkey, quail, and pheasant habitat. Now, right after that burn, it hasn't gotten to the point that it's keeping the turkeys and the birds from being there. And that's because of the stage of growth that it's in. But through the growing season, when it's more important for those nesting birds, they can't move through it to find food. It's easy for predators to scan the whole thing and find those nests. So you want diversity. If you do a burn in the spring, you don't have to do a burn, but a good way to effectively manage it is to do a burn, let it grow to 4 to 6 inches, and then hit the whole thing with glyphosate. If you're not worried about killing some of the native seed bank that might be up, usually you're not, because all that's there is the cool season grass. If you do know that you already have a good stand of other stuff, use clethodim, which is just a grass specific herbicide. and you'll avoid killing your wildflowers using that chemical.
Nice.
Um, so yeah. Anyways, what I was saying when you lost me for a minute ago was the reason this is important is because you want to identify these limiting factors in your habitat, even if they seem like they're not an issue yet. I don't want to go do timber stand improvement over a stand of bush honeysuckle without managing the honeysuckle first. Um, Otherwise, you're just amplifying the problem that is inevitable. Um, so, make sure you get a hold of whoever it is that's the expert that you contact and say, hey, I want to do timber stand improvement. I want to improve my prairie ecosystem, turn my pasture into good habitat. What do I need to take care of before I start burning, before I start doing timber stand improvement, hinge cutting, whatever that might be, so that you're not taking steps backwards when you're just trying to make things better. So
Nice. Well, dude, that was a great topic. I think it went well. I'm really glad we did the screen sharing. That was good. Although I'm a little worried, but we'll talk about that after we get off.
okay.
And dude, it was a good show, and I appreciate you coming on. How can people get a hold of Habitat Works, Dustin Williams, and use his knowledge?
Yeah, the most common way people get a hold of me are through Facebook. Just check out Habitat Works LLC on Facebook, or my phone number, which you always have on here, 816-752-7390. And
Awesome.
um, yep, I'm moving to more consulting and helping people at least identify these things and get hard copies of step-by-step instructions of what to do. Still doing a little bit of active management, but selling farms is getting kind of fun. So
That's good.
that's the way things are moving. But
Awesome. Well, Dustin Williams with Habitat Works, thanks for coming on, man, and good luck at your auction today.
yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.